Hi, you're watching Meet the Authors, part of the Alliouagana Festival of the Word right here in Montserrat. I'm Sharlene Lindsay, your host for today, and I am speaking with Jeunanne Alkins. She is an author out of Trinidad. Jeunanne, hi, how are you?
Good morning. I'm good.
Thank you so much for joining us on Meet the Authors and being a part of the Alliouagana Festival of the Word 2023.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to join you. Really excited about the festival.
Great. Jeunanne, a lot of our viewers may know who you are, some may not know who you are. So just give them a little insight into who Miss Alkins is.
So my name is Jeunanne Alkins. I have been a creative director, author, educator, sometimes illustrator for the last 13 years. I run a design studio, a boutique design studio called Everything Slight Pepper. If you've ever been to Trinidad and had doubles, it's how you
Above.
order, how you order doubles and all the sauces and just a little bit of heat. I've been working there as a creative director in publication and brand design for the last 13 years. And about 6 years ago, I made a segue into becoming a children's author, writing, illustrating, and designing my first book, Ready, Set, Hatch, which is on turtles. And then since then, I've had two publications. The second is Alex the Awesome and the Crazy Quest for the Golden Pod. It's the story of how chocolate is made, told by a spy agent, Agouti. And my latest book, The Most Magnificent, is the story of the seven mansions around the Queen's Park Savannah in Trinidad and Tobago who've gotten into an argument over who is the most magnificent.
It all sounds fun and interesting. I know it's for children, but I want to read them now.
I believe they are family audience books. As much as they are geared towards children, they start with my curiosity about the topics. So I know, and so it's geared to entertain adults as well.
Right. So it's going to make for great bedtime reading and that kind of a little wind down in the evening when you're having that conversation with your kids. I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. Jeunanne, which came first, illustrator or author?
So I'll kind of say it's really been a mix of the two for me. As a graphic designer, I mean, as a child, I was always interested in the arts, but I was always interested in advertising. I never really worked there, but I was always interested in books and like layout and seeing how things are put together, fonts, that kind of thing. So the words, not so much from the authoring perspective, but the use of words and how words support images has always been at play in my brain. So the two really happen together. And I mean, it's even how I design now, the two really balance each other. I'm very particular about how the words are represented visually as well as what their meaning is. So really it's an interplay of the two for me all the time, being author illustrator. I can't pick.
You spoke about the most magnificent and those seven mantras. I mean, for Trinidadians growing up, you've always heard about them. And as children, they tell us, a little bit about the history, where they come from. But for you personally, what do you find interesting about these structures?
Yeah. So when I started the project, there was a lot of activism around saving the buildings. The buildings were in various states of disrepair. And you drive around the savannah and I see them and I'm like, well, like why should you save them? They could just come off as opulent mansions, right? And you drive around, you see the hospital and other pressing issues, and you're like, why are these worth saving? And I'm always the type that if I don't know the answer to it, I'm going to go down the Google rabbit hole, which then turned into the research rabbit hole, then turned into finding out that we just see these buildings, but there are people who lived in them and what were their contributions to our society over the years. So the more we find out about ourselves is the more we can appreciate where we are and where we're going. So that was the inspiration behind the most magnificent. I had a lot of conversations at the time with my grandmother, and she was telling me because she knew people who had either done things or were associated with the houses. So I was like, there's so much more than just these, rich people buildings. You think, all these monuments that are somewhat out of touch for the average citizen. And I just wanted to bring this story to where we could feel like these are ours to celebrate and, appreciate this part of our history.
Right. So you give the buildings personalities, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the themes that are actually covered in this book?
So we personify the houses as elderly people who've been around for over 100 years, and they're bickering over who is the most magnificent. They speak about their age, they speak about how they look, and they speak about the people inside of them dead. So we use the plot centers around the kind of things that a child would argue over, who's the oldest, how you look, and basically my mommy, my daddy, this is what my people did, kind of thing, right? So, but at the end of the day, the central theme, we ask the teachers about the history of the buildings, and those are ploys to get the facts in there. But at the end of the day, the theme is that we're all each magnificent in our own special way. So while the buildings are, have different strengths, each of them is magnificent. So yeah, that's the overall resolution for the kids.
You're speaking about it, right? And because I've seen the buildings, I'm kind of, it's becoming animated in my head. So I get a little bit lost, a little bit carried away with the story, and I haven't even read this as yet. What are some tips that you would give to authors who are looking to write for children?
I think that works really well with all of the stories I've done, and in particular with the most magnificent is the character-driven approach. So what we did, because I really wanted kids to remember what each of the houses were used for or are used for. So we focused a lot on developing the characters, the professors, the school. Next to that is Lady Hayes Court, which is the Archbishop's house. Then there's Mrs. Millefleurs, who was known for her tea parties. Dr. Rumo, which was the cinema magnate family. The Archbishop next to that, Minister Whitehall, which is the office of the Prime Minister. And then Sir Stormire. So injecting even into the naming, the characters and the personalities, I think that's a tip I would give. Find a way for your audience, a young audience, to connect with your characters. In the turtle story, which is my first story about endangered leatherback turtles, I used a hatchling as the main character as opposed to the nesting mother, which I tend to see a lot more of. And right now, I'm taking that into a film project, and it's going to be told by the hatchling, right? So the idea was to put toddlers or children in the driver's seat of the turtle and conservation conversation. So I'd say really focus on strong characters. And the second tip would be really relatable plots, because 100-year-old buildings have nothing that could really, connect with a child. But arguing over who is the most magnificent definitely is something they can relate to. So my second tip is really to find a plot that is relatable to them, and then the story becomes engaging for them.
Good stuff. You alluded to another project coming out of the hatchling story. Tell us some of what you're getting into. What's in the pipeline?
So immediately in the pipeline is my next book. It's called Play a Mass, and it explores traditional mass, starting with Trinidad and Tobago Carnival, but making its way up the islands, because I believe it's something that it hasn't been documented for kids in a way that we depend on somebody to pass it down to you in your family, in your generation. It's not coming through the schools. So where's this knowledge? I just don't want it to die. So I feel like there's responsibility to document the mass, the maker mass playing a mask, becoming characters aspect of our carnival culture across the region. So that's my next project. It's the traditional mask characters, it's music, it's just trying to create something that we can, if somebody's not there to teach it to you, there's something that can, right? It's a little bit different to anything I've done before because it doesn't have the plot and character driven elements of how I normally do storytelling. But I'm trying it because I believe it needs to be done. So I believe that our carnival traditions, our music, the act of becoming the masquerade, the making of the masquerade, all of this, I really I would hate to see it not exist in the forthcoming years. And in lieu of somebody to hand it down to you, I'm hoping to create something that becomes almost a reference. So that's
Montserrat gets a little feature.
Sorry?
Montserrat is getting a little feature.
Oh yes. I am trying my hardest. I mean, it's a ticklish one for me, and I mean, naturally prone to overthinking, over researching, and this book was like the biggest panic attack for me to make sure I got it right. I mean, even to this day, even this book, every time anyone opens any of my books, I'm like, okay, gonna spot some fact that I I got wrong, because it's this hybrid of edutainment, right, which is education and entertainment. So it means I need to be accurate. I mean, as opposed to when I move into my world of fantastical stories, that could be anything I want in my imagination. I really have to ensure accuracy with what I'm doing. So I find the culture topic and origins to be a difficult one, because there's lack of documentation. Oral tradition means it has changed versions of who tells you the story usually says the origin.
So your granny might tell you something. My granny, I'm like, no, that's not why they have the red ribbon. It's because of this. Who's right? You know,
and you see, and especially in the traditional mask realm, you see a lot of characters popping up across the French Caribbean that look so still French originating Caribbean, you know, who were colonized by the French over the years, that look similar, but each of their stories are so different, right? You know, like the Peregrinaud character in our culture looks very similar to John Canoe characters, right? There's the buxom, we have it, the Dame Lorraine, and in Barbados there's the Mother Sally character that looks very similar. So, you know, it just really,
I think they have one that looks similar to it as well. In Montserrat, we have Miss Pussy, and she also has the big bust and the big backside, you know, so it goes through.
So the planter's wife is the common thread, the mimicking the planter's wife, you know, pomp and ceremony is where the story has commonality, but just trying to make sure I tell the accurate story as I go on the islands is gonna be my challenge to myself for the next year.
I'm really looking forward to that one because I'm an avid mask lover. I make masks myself, so looking forward to that one. And I think as well, as you said, there's different versions of the stories, yes, but in certain aspects you're allowed that little bit of creative freedom, as it will, in just instilling what we believe is our history, because they do have that common thread with the slavery and stuff. So mass
is expression. Like I tell myself this all the time. Mass is expression, and even in my making a mass of the mass I'm making for this book, I'm gonna put my it's definitely a directed and a very opinionated version of it, right? So, and that's mass because I'm making a mass as well.
That's it.
Exactly.
Would you recommend for other authors, do you think that they should stick with the writing and focus on the writing, or it's okay to to illustrate your own stuff?
So I have my perspective on this is that know your strengths, right? For me, I know where my strengths are now. My background is in graphic design and communications. So I have writing and design in my arsenal, right? So, but I know where my strengths aren't. Like I don't touch on parenting topics. I don't have children. I don't try, that's not where I would, if I decide to tackle those kind of topics, I would then get advisory or bring people onto my team to help me understand that, because I know my weaknesses. So I believe if you know you are a writer and you want to be a writer, try to find somebody who maybe that's not their strength and you all could work together in the beginning, at least, bartering. People do not appreciate as much bartering service. There are a lot of people who have the opposing skills of what you need and you can work together. I tell that to my students all the time. Work with each other. You have something you can do and the other can't, right? So, but I believe the essence is really be honest with yourself and acknowledge your strengths, right? Because even though I think a lot of various styles of illustration can work for children's books once it's put together well, you need to know how to put together things for kids. You need to know how it works on a page and how words and images work together to tell a story. So it's either not becoming repetitive and or it's not trying to it's not competing against each other. So
right.
yeah. So I mean, I really think know your strengths, and if you are gonna attempt to be an author and illustrator and you don't necessarily have that background, the simplest, try to keep it as simple as possible. As simple and as original as possible. Like I feel we tend to feel you need to do a lot for it to be successful, but distilling down to the strongest, simplest way to tell the story has, for me, been the most effective.
It makes sense. It does make sense. And everything you do is how to keep it simple. So
yeah, try.
How can our AFW viewers connect with you and your work?
Sure. So my kids' brand of products is called Bright Eyed, and we're on social media, Facebook and Instagram as @WeAreBrightEyed. I'm on Instagram as well at Jeunanne, JeUnanne. And pretty much, if you search my name, you'll find me anywhere. It's one of the benefits of a unique name. So our books are on Amazon. You can search any of the titles: Ready, Set, Hatch, Alex the Awesome and the Crazy Quest for the Golden Pod, or The Most Magnificent, or search my name, and they're available shipping internationally on Amazon.
Awesome. Jeunanne, it's been a pleasure speaking to you once again. Thank you so much for being a part of the Alliouagana Festival of the Word this year. Looking forward to seeing more work from you, and I'm looking out for that mass book. I am looking out for that mass book.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. To you, our viewers, stick with us. We'll be back with more.